Picture yourself in a classroom. What does it look like? Where are you sitting? Who's around you? Take a second. Now, picture your report card. What did success look like to you? Was it a number? A letter? A percentage that somehow told you who you were? Take a look at this report card. What kind of story does it tell? The truth is, for most of us, learning was never really about learning. It was about performing. You probably pictured something similar to what I've experienced. Rows of desks, 30 students, all facing the front. A teacher talking, students listening, or at least pretending to. And somewhere in that room, you were trying to figure out, am I good at this? Do I belong here? Am I smart enough? What if I told you learning could look different? What if it happened outside, breathing fresh air instead of recycled silence? What if learning was about the process, not about the outcome? What if learning wasn't comparing yourself to the person next to you, but about becoming the best version of yourself? What if you weren't bad at school, but school was bad for you? The truth is, nobody learns the same way. But yet, we've created a system which expects them to. I was never your typical learner. I tried really hard. I really did. But no matter how much effort I put in, the results did not often show. The truth was, I wasn't failing learning. Learning was failing me. Eventually, when people started to notice how hard I was trying and how much I was struggling, I got support, and I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Things started to make sense, not as limitations, but as realizations. I don't learn like everyone else. I cared a lot about doing really well, but it just wasn't working for me. It felt like I was being taught to in a different language, one I did not understand. I would go home and think rigorously about the things that I was taught. And after many, many hours, I would finally start to understand. Test taking was something that was very hard for me. Have you ever experienced this? You get to class ready for a math test, or at least feeling ready. Those around you, unprepared and not understanding. Before the test, I would even help others and try to explain concepts we were going to be tested on. Then we all sat down and took the test. I would take much longer than others, and others would score much better than me. And the result for those I helped, even they would do better than I did. That was very frustrating for me. Now, I realize that that was hard for me because I was being talked at and not with. I wasn't an agent of my learning, and learning wasn't something I was part of. It was being done to me. I realized that learning clicks for me when I care about it. Here's the part we don't talk about enough. This system is systemically biased to neurodivergent learners. In fact, according to the Public Health Agency of Canada, 82% of Canadians aged 15 plus with ASD say they experience a co-occurring disability, and 72% of those say that learning is something they struggle with the most because they're on the spectrum. So, if learning is so hard for people on the spectrum, why do we not have a system that caters to that different way of learning? I believe the result of this statistic is not that learners on the spectrum are bad at learning, but that, for most of us, the system that is learning doesn't work for us. The truth is, this is the reality for more people than you think. In fact, globally, 1 in 5 children are neurodivergent. Everything changed for me when I was exposed to a new way of learning. Some of my teachers started to teach through inquiry-based learning and valued student agency. I felt like I was seen, I felt heard, and like my way of learning was honored. It completely changed how I learned. Something incredible happened. I didn't just start succeeding at school, I started engaging, I started caring, and I started becoming. Learning wasn't something that was being done to me anymore. It was something that I was part of. And it didn't just matter to me, it mattered to my peers as well. And when that happens, students don't just succeed, they transform. The Central Okanagan Public School District has a model they use for student agency, co-designed by Shane Saphir and Jamil Duggan. This model is shaped around these things, that when students feel identity, they feel like their identity is part of their learning, and that they feel belonging when those people around them recognize their identity. They feel like they can inquire about new ideas and ask meaningful questions that they care about. And when they get the answers to those questions, they can solve amazing problems and feel efficacy. My school's model is love, learn, thrive. Because when this connects to the student agency model, because when students love what they learn, they thrive. And when they start to understand something they care about, they blossom. Through this kind of learning, students don't just succeed, they transform. They become leaders, just like I did. For me, this meant putting myself out there and creating opportunities for myself. I represented Canada at a United Nations conference on climate change in Brazil. I contribute to government conversations on my city's municipal council as the youth councillor. I've represented myself and my school multiple times on the news. And next year, I'm going to my dream university. I stepped into a lot of places I never imagined myself in. And this was because I had teachers who allowed me to be who I am. Not because the system has changed, but because it is changing. And while it's changing, there's an issue that we have to talk about. My story is rare, but it doesn't have to be. And it's a result of a system that was never really built on education. It was built on efficiency, on standardization, on sorting people quickly into factory jobs so they can make money. But we can't flourish from money. Grades are fast, they're efficient, and they're measurable, but they don't tell a story like lived experiences do. They don't capture growth, creativity, resilience, or struggle. They reduce something deeply human into a number. Let me tell you a story. There was once a man in London whose job was to light street lamps. Every evening, he would climb a ladder and light each lamp individually, one by one. It was his identity, all he knew how to do. Then, eventually, one day, boom, the light bulb was invented. And suddenly, overnight, it was gone. All he knew how to do was no longer needed. This is what happens when we prepare people for a world that no longer exists. Right now, our world is changing faster than ever. So the question isn't, what do students need to know? It is, who will they become? And what does the world ask of them? Because the truth is that learning is something you feel. It's not something you do. You feel changed. And around the world, we're starting to see this shift. The OECD, Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, has done years researching data on learning in the 21st century. They have released a framework that they believe on how learning and human flourishing is in relation. They believe for humans to flourish, students need to learn adaptive problem solving, ethical competency, to appreciate the world, to understand the world, and to act in the world. When I was in grade 3, the Ministry of Education in BC changed their curriculum away from a focus on content and towards a focus on competency, not just interested in what students can memorize and know, but how they think, connect, and act. And the United Nations Global Goals remind us that learning has to connect to something bigger than ourselves. It has to connect to the world. So picture a different kind of graduate. One who knows who they are, builds meaningful relationships, asks the questions that matter, takes action in their community, and understands their responsibility to the world. A graduate who doesn't ask, what did I get? But what does this ask of me? And how will I contribute to the world? So what do we need to do? If you're a school administrator, an educator, a superintendent, or a school board trustee, allow the design of learning that students want to be a part of, not one they have to survive. And if you're a student, know this. Your voice matters. Your way of thinking matters. And you are not the problem. And if you're anyone watching, we need to stop asking ourselves, how do we make students fit school, but rather, how do we make schools fit humanity? Because learning was never meant to measure you. It was meant to transform you. Instead, let's ask ourselves, who am I? And what am I going to do about it? So, what will you do about it? According to all aerodynamic laws, the bumblebee cannot fly because its wingspan is not in the right proportion to its body weight. Ignoring these laws, the bumblebee flies anyways. This is a quote from one of my favorite actors, Peter Dinklage. So let's not change the bumblebee. Let's not change its wingspan, its body weight. Let's not give it a jetpack so it can fly. Let's change the world that says it's impossible for it to fly. Thank you.